It's a pleasure and a privilege today to bring one of All Black greats into the room, Charles Reichelman. He played 10 games for the All Blacks and had a successive career over 12 years, going on to play for Toyota in Japan. He is part of the Optimisation Hub team and very passionate about Pacific players, both here and internationally, equally passionate about our youth and our women in sport and the need to support sport from the outset. So my pleasure today to introduce you to Charles Reichelman. Hey Charlie, it's just a real pleasure to have you here today and to welcome you and to do this podcast and to really just listen to you and your wisdom. We've known each other a number of years, which is pretty fantastic. Yes. Coming into the Optimisation Hub, there were lots of conversations about what we were doing and listening to your passion and your playing career. Can you just give us a bit of a snapshot of your history in sport, you know, what you've done in sport yourself?
Yeah, cool. Hi, Graziella. It's good to see you again, actually. It's been a good 20 odd years. I guess we're getting older, but you're looking a whole lot younger than I am. Just a snapshot of my history. I was born and raised in Tonga. Went over to Auckland when I was 14 for secondary school. Discovered at Auckland Grammar School that I could actually play rugby. Then after school went on to play for Auckland. Had about 70 odd games for Auckland. And from there progressed on to the Auckland Blues, what it was called then. It's now just the Blues. Had about 50 odd games for the Blues, and then fortunately made the All Blacks and played 10 games, 6 tests for the All Blacks. After my career in New Zealand, I then went over to Japan, lived there for 3 years and played for Toyota. So that was it was actually a really cool experience. I really liked Japan. I missed the food, missed the people in Japan, but now back in the islands. So I'm living in Tonga and New Zealand at the moment.
Fantastic. So we had some conversations about, you know, what it's been like to come out of sport and, you know, carrying that All Black jersey. That's just a lifelong legacy, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. It's something that's pretty special, and I guess for all of us who have played for the All Blacks, we're part of a legacy, which is something that not many people can take away from us.
It's a fantastic thing. And you guys all get together once a year, don't you?
Yeah, once a year. There's the New Zealand Rugby Union organises a dinner, and whoever's available comes along to the dinner, and it was a good chance to catch up with guys that you don't really see most of the time.
Yeah.
Apart from guys that you have played with that you probably still hang around with closer to home. But these dinners are kind of done in different places around New Zealand, so it's up to us whether we can travel and get there and have a good time with catch up with the boys and tell a few yarns and lie a lot and get up to a bit of mischief. It's good fun.
Have you seen any changes in the culture of sport over the years? You know, are you seeing things now that are different in sport, or, you know, that you're viewing now as we have professional sport really truly taking hold, even for young women as well as young men coming into sport as early as 16?
Yeah, yes, there is a lot of change now. For one, the boys are playing more games than when we were playing. The games are, I guess the boys are bigger, stronger, and they're faster. The impact seems to be a whole lot harder than from when we were playing. The one thing I do see, a lot of young kids that are coming through are getting spotted by scouts or whatever agents at a much younger age when they're still at school. So that we didn't have at school when I was there. So that's a big change. I guess these kids having to deal with contracts and where they're going to play, or there's various other pressures which come in which we never actually had. So the time is definitely changing.
That 20 years ago, we didn't really have a lot of social media either.
No, and there was none of that.
We didn't have any of that sort of stuff. I don't think Facebook was around. Yeah. All the other impact that our young athletes now have to deal with certainly wasn't on the cards. Considering all of that, and considering the amazing history that you've had and your contribution to sport and where you're sitting with sport at the moment, becoming part of the Optimisation Hub and also becoming a master trainer, getting exposure to the programs, where do you see the value in sport for that? You know, what's drawing you to that?
I think it is immense. There is a big need for for something like this that we're doing. Mental health has always been neglected. When I was playing, it was the old harden up and just continue on was the attitude then. There was never anything about mental health. There was no support for it. It's only lately that the mental health aspect has started to come into sport. The All Blacks have now got a team psychologist which travels with them. That's with them the whole time. But as for most of the other levels, the pressures that are mounting more and more for athletes now plays a big part with their psyche. So this mental health thing is definitely immense and something that we need to look at. And what we're doing is well, it's totally up there.
Yeah, I know a few people have coined it as not only groundbreaking but state of the art, because we're not so much as dealing with mental health, which there are some fantastic agencies out there that do. And you heard the Mental Health Commissioner today saying, look, we're sitting in a space where we're all about prevention, and prevention being education and resilience education, but not just throwing the word resilience around, actually considering what you need to take, from learning something back into the sporting sphere to perform well, but also to be a great person. And I think we've thrown that around. I mean, if you could give us a couple of really great takeaways about your view of, what it takes to be an elite sports person today, or where you see it really important to support young people in sport, what would it be?
So just
where
going
do
back,
they need it?
just going back to that, it's that prevention thing is a big thing now, which is what we're doing. Obviously, we are not psychologists. We're master trainers. We're there to teach these kids, to facilitate these kids. And the one thing that I see that sticks out is that these kids, a lot of them need to grow as a person and as an athlete. So if we can direct them in the right way, we can encourage them, give them more motivation, and get them to know themselves better in a way. Excuse me. We'll make these boys boys and girls a whole lot better in themselves, within themselves as a person. And this is what we need to develop, really.
So being
optimizing these kids to be a better athlete and a better person in life.
Fantastic. So being able to do that, you've seen that with teams this week. You saw a young team go through a program and seeing how they came out the other end, and it was quite an eye-opener, hey?
It was great.
Yeah. These young lads coming into the room and, really afraid of, going overseas and playing some really big teams, but learning quite quickly how resilient skills could be built, even in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Quite dynamic, punchy kind of programs, fun. There's so much energy in the room, and that's a cool thing.
I think Paul had them dancing. I think
we did have them almost dancing at the end of it, which is really neat because they're going back home and parents are writing back and saying to us, "Hey, that was fantastic." But not only that, they're coming back week after week, and they go away with something quite solid.
And that's what it's about. That's what we want them to be.
Yeah, I know. Just in closing there. We had some conversations from women, from women in sport. And for yourself, that was a little bit of a surprise to hear about professional sport for women. And we've got a great product that's there called the Women's Pace. Yes. I just want to hear from an elite male athlete, what's it like for you now really truly listening to, okay, so this is what young women and women themselves are going through in sport and the sort of support they need and the program and what it offers. What do you think of that?
Yeah, to tell the truth, it's a bit different from New Zealand as it is here in Australia. But I think the one thing that does stick out is that the barriers that they face are just enormous. Us as a male athlete, we had everything. We had, we needed a jersey, we had a jersey. We needed a bag, we had a bag. But at the moment with women's sport, Here in Australia that we've been going through, they look like they're having barriers left, right and centre. They've got barriers from home, they've got barriers from administration. They've got a lot more barriers and a lot more negativity, I think, that's against them. And to listen to a top athlete who's 29 years old and then listen to a top athlete who's 14 years old, a lot of it is still exactly the same for the 29-year-old as the 14-year-old. The 14-year-old, they get kicked off the field because they're a women's team. The 29-year-old, she's always fighting and still fighting at the moment with administration for even to get a bag, for their gear. So a lot a lot of boundaries, which is not quite boundaries, but barriers that is holding them back. But to their credit, I can see how amazing these girls are and the challenges they're facing, and yet they're still pushing and they're still pushing. It's a far more stronger than us men, that's for sure.
So resilient young female athletes,
Absolutely.
making it in the world. If I could ask you, you've had this incredible playing career. You've done some amazing things in your life. You're living in an idyllic place in the world. You're working in great places. We're fortunate to have you as part of the team who can travel and work with us. Things that inspire you. Give me a quote or a book that's inspired you to really just, to keep going and to say, look, life is big and this is what motivates me. So a motivator for Charlie, what's that?
Yeah, I'm actually reading Andre Agassi's book at the moment, and that's probably my big motivator at the moment. It's more about his last game that he ever played on the professional circuit, and he starts off with he can't even get out of bed pretty much because of the injuries that he has, and the pressures that he's got, and this there was it is a bit of an eye opener reading that book. There is a similar correlations to when I finished sport, but obviously he being the individual sport, it was a bit more interesting to read about these things, and just things like that kind of motivate you to keep going. And you mentioned that I live in a idyllic place, and yes, I live in Tonga, but at the same time we still have our issues with a lot of young Polynesian sports people. So why I'm here is a lot of it to do is to dealing with a lot of Polynesian young kids, which I see need a lot of help, especially mentally.
We're pretty excited about that because, I know one of the things that we've spoken about quite often is, Pacific dysphoria, where we have, a lot of young athletes coming from the islands here and then returning home with a real sense of disassociation or disillusionment after sport, often with very little money because there hasn't been any support around developing their sports identity or a whole identity, and even some resilience or core skills to self-manage in life.
Yeah.
So
there's none of that especially in the islands, there's no mental health support, full stop. And these kids, they've got more pressure on them, a lot of pressure from the family, and they just don't know how to deal with it.
So a real necessity then also with our Pacifica players to ensure that we deliver a core program to them as they're coming into sport here, so they manage themselves well.
For sure.
Great to have you in here today, Charlie. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you very much, for actually including me in this course. It's been awesome, and good group of guys and girls, and we'll definitely be seeing you guys again and keeping this going and keeping it going.
Awesome.